start with this question. Why does this topic of innovation grab our attention? Why are we spending time on it? Why did you take time out of your busy life to be here? I think Natalie hit on this a little bit this morning, that innovation at a very deep and personal level often equates to hope. Hope that things will get better. Hope that there's a better way forward. Hope that there's something new on the horizon. And so we connect with innovation because it breathes hope into our lives. Second, I think we're also inspired by those who innovate. There's something about their struggle, their willingness to try, their willingness to risk, to put themselves out there with every opportunity to fail, not just succeed, that inspires us and helps us to want to be better. So as we enter into this final conversation, there's a couple of questions that I'd really like for you to keep in mind, not just for this session, but also as you leave this session. So first, how do we create an environment where innovation can thrive, where it really becomes part of the culture and DNA of a city, a country, and the world? Second, how do we accelerate the adoption of innovation? So on that first question, given where I work at Atlas Network, of course, I see the answer to this question very much in a philosophical, political, public policy framework, right? And I believe there's an equation that has been tested and tried and successful. And the principles, the variables of that equation you find in the Atlas vision statement. They're principles of individual liberty, private property, ownership, a limited government, free markets where people have the freedom to transact, to try, to engage, or to disengage, should they so choose. And all of this is secured in an environment where the rule of law is in place. Now, when that happens, when those environments by and large are in place, we get great things. We get innovation. One of the best examples of that is in the tech space. So when you look at the slide up here, what do you see? Well, let's go back 20 years. This might be what you saw, right? And today, it's this, right? So what enabled over a 20-year period the replacement essentially of all of those products into one? That's a significant innovation roadmap. And in the technology sector, we have really seen an environment where government has been limited by and large, where intellectual property has been respected, where competition has been allowed to flourish and be open. What if that same environment were to be seen in healthcare, in education, in countries like Venezuela or Russia or China? What kind of innovation and hope would we unleash for the world? So the next one is, how do we then move to this adoption question? Because frankly, innovation on its own, standing alone, is, I won't say pointless, but if nobody uses the innovation, it's kind of like the question of if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear, does it make a sound? And so as we have these conversations around innovation, around Bitcoin, one of the key things we need to answer and ask ourselves is, how do we accelerate the adoption of these ideas? It's actually an area that I've spent the last 10 years of my research and what I did my dissertation on. And there's also a formula I found in that space as well, and it's called the diffusion of innovations. It's a theoretical framework, and it teaches us some things that you may already have heard about. For example, early adopters and late adopters and laggards. We've heard these terms. Those of you who know of Simon Sinek, this is one of his favorite theories. He talks about this all the time. But there's something beneath that as I've studied more, that this theory helps teach us some key principles that are really important for this innovation conversation. Number one, we have to have a better understanding of risk, where it plays, and how to minimize it if we want more adoption to take place. Number two, how we measure success matters. And as more innovation is introduced into an environment, Bitcoin, for example, we can't measure the same way, or we're setting up the innovation to fail. It also teaches us the importance of influencers and the right influencers that can help us. And then finally, it teaches us some things about those who may be displaced when an innovation comes forward, because that always happens. And how do we turn those who are displaced, create value for them in the new environment so that rather than those that are getting in the way of that innovation adoption, become actually advocates and accelerators of that. So let me bring that home. Now as we prepare to hear from some great innovators in the music space, in the education space, and in the sports space, let's keep these two questions in mind. Number one, how can I personally help create, advocate, support the variables that create a culture and environment of freedom, individual liberty, and innovation? And two, how can I be an accelerator of adoption? Really, because at the end of the day, as these folks come onto the stage and you hear them, it's not whether or not these will be successful or whether or not they will change the world. The important question is, will they have the chance to try? Thank you.